It's mentioned, Ki Yadua, it's Chanukah, not as man for Hesped. Chochem Befonov, it's very not clear, the Gdorim, so Bizman Hazeh, what is a Chochem. But I think there's some Sachen that we could speak about Rav Nachman Zuchich Sadik Levroche, that are besonder Mishtayach to Chanukah. We should take something from Chanukah. It's Yadua, yes, that's the Yeshiva Rabbarin, it's from Chavetz Chaim, that the whole Bayis Sheni is not be'emes, a Gula Shleima, it's Chosru Heidvarim, wasn't the true Madrega of Beis HaMikdash, and the Yesod of Bayis Sheni was a Hachane, a preparation for the long Golas that Klal Yisroel had to endure, and we're still waiting in Hirav Yameinu for the Gula Shleima. And the Yesod of the Bayis Sheni was to bring to Klal Yisroel the Madrege of Torah Shebal Peh. Chazal say, the Gemara, the Ma'asim el Ga'altim, steht Bimei, the Gemara reconciles the different Golasin as Hemid Lanu, Shimon HaTzadik, Matisyo Banov, they are Yavonim. Matisyo Banov, everyone knows, that's Chashmenoim, the Nes of Chanukah. Shimon HaTzadik, 200 years earlier. What does that have to do with Golos Yavam, with the Nes of Chanukah? But the entire Malchus Yavan, the Greek Empire, the Greek culture, is began after the Churban Bayis Rishon. Kedua, the Gemara brings, Shimon HaTzadik met Alexander Muktim, Alexander the Great. There's the beginning of the Greek Empire. In Bayis Rishon, the Klal Yisrael had the Madrega of Nevuah, is even the Goyim knew, Yesh Navi be Yisroel. Klal Yisrael had a B'zunder Kesher, a bind with the Rebbeinu Shalom. After the Churban Bayis, there was no more Nevuah, Gimel Nevi'im, Olu Imoyim, but there was the Tkufa, the end of Nevuah. There came the Mokim B'Chochmas Yovan, Chochma B'Goyim Tamid, we have the great Chochma. And the Gemara says, the Hemid Lehem Shimon HaTzadik, Chochem HaMedaber B'Ruach HaKodesh. Keneged Chochmas Yovan. The Gemara tells us in Bava Basra, Chochem Odif Minavi. A Chochem is greater than a Navi. What does that mean? Avada and Navi is a greater Madrege. Avada, every Navi had to be a great Chochem. The Nevuah is only Sheira. Nevuah could only be to someone who's also a great Chochem. But there's a b'zunder point in Chachma, which is greater than Nevuah. Nevuah is the Dvar Hashem. To receive the Dvar Hashem is a great, great Madrege. But besides Moshe Rabbeinu, no mortal could be Mekabel the Dvar Hashem when he's in control of his physical abilities. The goof, the physical being of the person, is too physical to absorb Nevuah. Chachma goes into the person, becomes his Metzias. Chachma Medaber B'Ruach HaKodesh. I'll give you a meridike mashal that we could understand closer to our times. Chacham Arif Minavi. A Maise, it's Geshibim, about the Chavetz Chaim. Before World War I, in time of the Russian Revolution, this is Geshibim, the uncle of Rav Moshe Feinstein, Jason Reb Reuven Feinstein, learned in Radin. And there was a meridike sakone, and they didn't know which way is the greater sakone. To remain in Radin, that was the front line, or to go deeper into Russia. What should we do? They went to ask the Yeshiva of Hirsch, Levinson, the Chavetz Chaim's son-in-law, and he said, I don't know. So he didn't know. They went into the Chavetz Chaim. The Chavetz Chaim answered, I don't know. So he went out of the Chavetz Chaim. The Hirsch said, if the Chavetz Chaim doesn't know, we have to make the Geirel HaGra. They made the Geirel HaGra, and the pasuk came out to the pasuk in Vayishlach. The Yankov Avinu said, Im Yova v'yiko machna achas machna nishal lefleita. We have to divide up. So he said the Geirel HaGra was told us exactly what we have to do. So Hirsch went back into the Chavetz Chaim. He's ready to tell him. The Chavetz Chaim says, I was thinking about it. The Torah tells us what we have to do in every situation. Yankov Avinu, in such a situation, decided that he has to split up, that some should be saved. That's Chacham Adif Minavi. It's not Nevuah, Geir HaGra. But that's the idea. Min HaShamayim, they let you know there's Nevuah. Chacham Adif Minavi. Chachma, the Chachma HaTorah, the Torah Shabbat, that the Nes of Chanukah, Ki Yodua, the Or of the Menorah is the symbol of Torah Shabbat. The Oren is Torah Shabbat, and by Yesheni there was no Oren. The Menorah, the Torah Shabbat, Chacham Adif Minavi, because the Torah permeates the Ramach Evorim Shasagidim, the entire being, the physical being of the person is permeated. The Chazal tell us, Tamid Chochem Kogu Vaneish. Their entire being is the Eish of Torah. And the Chazal say, where do we see this? Kiko Dvorei Koeshnu Mashem. That's talking about the Divrei Torah. Where do we see the Tamid Chochem? The Tamid Chochem is the one who the Torah permeates. His Ramach Evorim Shasagidim, his entire being. If we think of Rav Nachman, we see what it means, the Talmud Chacham, permeating its being. Avada, as they mentioned, Sheftel, Rebbeinu, was the Talmud, the Talmud, from the Talmidim, the Talmud was a true Talmud of the Yeshiva Zechet Tzarek Levracha. But I think we have to mention also, the Haschala, the Sheirish, he learned by Rabbi Brovsky, Yibara L'chaim, together with the Yeshiva Zazayin Gesund. The first Kufa, the Yeshiva Zazayin Gesund came from a shtul from Rabbanim. Maybe he had already some shaykhs. But most of that class, when they came into Rabbi Brovsky, didn't know what a Gemara looked like. And they learned by him for 5 years. And they came out, it's a davar pele. If you think 60, 70, over 60 years ago, in that time in America, all over, in Torah Vadas and all the yeshivas in New York, how many of them stayed from? It was a Neure de Gezach. And in that class, Rubam Kekulam, geblieben bei Torah, waren größte Talmidei Chachomim. That was Hashpah. The Hashpah of Rabbi Brovsky, a Talmud from Rabbi Ber, brought over, like we say, the Messiah. The Yisroel of the Nes of Chanukah, that in every Golis, the Torah is Kayim, Shechor Gedolim Shalahem, Al Bizman Shein Beis HaMikdash Kayim. The Kerch of the Torah Shabbat stays with us in the Golis. And he was Makabel, that was the Haschala, that was the Sheirish. Then he came to the Reshiva. He learned by the Reshiva, it was a Talmud, it eingezapt every Torah. And I mentioned before, the Maisim, the eingezapt, the Maisim altogether, it wasn't just he liked to tell stories. Godul Shimusha Yosem Limuda. That was the Chelek mitgegangen in the Torah, the Messiris of the Torah. Every prat to prat, everything. And I always had the feeling for him, I don't know of a balabas who to me was the prime example of the Nefesh HaChaim's balabas. Others speak about the Rambam's balabas, how many hours he worked and how many hours he learned. But Mir is the aggressive pellet. I say it Amo when I say in Vadim, Halavai the B'nai Torah should be the Nefesh HaChaim's balabas. Nefesh HaChaim's balabas explains the Machlekes Reb Shimon Bar Yochai and Rabbi Yishmael. Reb Shimon Bar Yochai is the one who held Tarasu Im Nasai, should be pure learning. And Rabbi Yishmael says, Hanik behem minik derech eretz. The Torah says, Vasafta di gonecha. You have to also earn a living. Zok Nefesh HaChaim. Does that mean that when the time you're learning a living, that part of the time you're exempt from Torah? No. Hanik bohem minik derech eretz. In them, in the Torah, you should be haning minik derech eretz. As he mentioned before, my Zikaron also one time, must have been, I don't remember exactly, it was 50 years ago or so, like you say, one time he went into the shop, and where it was, he was holding by holding by the car, he was holding in the sugya. Dort mit gehalten. We saw this Nefesh HaChaim, haning bohem minik derech eretz. Wherever you are, it's entire. The Gemara brings my Rabbi Lazar, Shuka Elyon, Shuka Tachtain, wherever he is, wherever he's Isaac. But his Isaac, where is the cup? Where is the person? Where does he lie? How does that happen? This is not a point we have to realize of hasmada. Hasmada is wonderful. Diligence, kabbalah te'itim. He said he had chavrusis, keseder. But such a thing, you're busy, you're doing something. He has in business. He's Isaac in Parnasa. Where does it come? How do you reach such a madrega? That's Chacham Araf Minavi. The Torah permeates. This is what he was kailet, mitchilasai. This was the sherish. And this is what he saw weiter. This is what he was makabel from his rebbeim, from the Reshiva. He saw what the Messiahs, what G'dolei Torah were. He heard what G'dolei Torah in Europe. And he saw it, Kidheim Chayenu V'erech Yameinu. This was his mitzias. This was his life. Everything else we did. As I, like when sagen that was 6, 7 years ago, he said, good, alles fine, good. Even from a Yid at that time, good, was is mit Tachlis. Tachlis. What's the purpose? Tachlis. Tachlis means good. You have to earn a living. Tachlis. Tachlis. It's very nice. You have to earn a living. But that's the Tachlis. That's the purpose. That's the gebitten that we saw, the Tachlis. Where was the Kiyem Chayenu V'erech Yameinu? That was in every word of Torah. The Kedush of the Torah. The Ora Torah. The Eish of Torah. The Eish of Shechina. That every word of Torah is Kodesh. When he's the simcha that he had, when he's machadish, a kneich, nach a word, avare, had a simcha to say over. He was kailet yediyas. But he was the omel, like we said, he worked, and when he talked up a word, a chirish, it was ein l'shayr, taka wie the Nefesh HaChaim sagt, the merit exact von Chidushei Torah. That was the simcha we saw by him. This is something. It's taka the yontif of Chanukah. Chaval, auf der Avdim lo mishtachim. Das mir verloren. Aber das man von Chanukah is this man that all of us have the yashpo, could be oile, could grow. In this musig, the godel that Chacham is Yoser Minavi. In this prat that the Chachma of the Torah, the Ora Torah, penetrates and permeates his entire being. Each one of us could be kailet a little bit more, a little closer to the Kol Gufan Eish, the Eish of Torah, Ki Kol Dvorei Ka Eish Num Hashem, that the Dvar Hashem is the Eish, become part of us. That will be a meridike schus, the Ili Nishmosai, if he will be machazik, our Chanukah, the limud of Chanukah, just a little bit, each one of us, that Avara will be a schus for us, a schus for him. Zol Zayin Amelitz Yosher, Zayin Eishes Chayil, for his children and grandchildren, for the Eiter, for the Deiris, for the ganze Olam HaTorah, was der Olam HaTorah darf haben, jetzt as viel Rachmim, das man von Gzeiris of Ruchnius, was Klein Yisroel has to have the Osel and Nisim, Laveseinu b'yamim ahem as man hazeh, with his Gabrus, with the Mesiras Nefesh, the Yomim ahem. We should be zoiche b'zman hazeh to see Azoch Nisim. We should be zoiche to see the Gula Shlema. Moch Hashem dimam Yaakov Panim. Nemer Amen.